I like the word that you used before with anticipation. Like it wasn't in 2010, it wasn't something that you anticipated, especially with a lot of the new faces that came in. And can you say it's somewhat the same this year? Like obviously, you guys won the Scudetto 2 seasons ago, but then last year, losing it by 1 point, it's a bit discouraging. Start of the season, Lukaku is not the Lukaku of 2 years ago. Obviously, that goes without saying. But like it's been up and down for him. But now, obviously, they be seeming to have some form in Champions League. They're up like so far. I'm not trying to put any evil eye on both either you or Adriano, but like what I'm trying to say is you're up 2-0 right now in the semifinal of Champions League. How does that feel in terms of like your expectations to this year? Was that something you anticipated, or was it something that you didn't have any idea that was going to happen at all?
I
Also, the
don't.
Coppa Italia final too. That's also something too.
Right, right. And we're still, we're still fighting on all three fronts, right? Even if you're talking about top four, like that hasn't been secured yet. So it is a really exciting time, no matter what, to just be involved in all the competitions. Not every team gets to say that, but in terms of anticipation for this year, if you look at our recent performances in Europe, like even with as
Europa
strong,
League 2 years ago, or was it 3 years ago? Europa League
right?
final.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
with Conte.
3 in
So
2020.
yeah.
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Conte's performance in the Champions League has obviously not been great. We've been in some, no matter what, it seems like every year we're in a very, very tough group, and we haven't had, we haven't gotten past the first hurdle, the group stage, in a little bit of time. So you can't say, as passionate of a fan and as much as you support your team, you can't say that anything like this is expected. And the fact that it becomes a derby against your cousins in Milan, it adds so much more to it. It really, really does. So yeah, it never. I wasn't thinking Champions League semifinal the day that the draw came out and Bayern Munich and Barcelona were in our group. I'll just put it at that.
Fair enough.
That was a group of death, right? That was a group of death. So if there's one thing to applaud Inter for all this, you take your biases aside. I mean, getting out of a group of death like that, I mean, it's nothing to really look past. And who you want to credit and who you want to put that towards, we can go on for days for that. But I think just in general, I think the group got together at the right time and finally got over that, like Alessandro said, that first hurdle. Made it this far unexpectedly. I think both teams have gotten here to this point unexpectedly. Maybe ahead of schedule for these projects in Milano on both sides. So, but again, merit is also there, I think. So it's listen, it's an exciting time. Like Alessandro said, not only for Champions League, for his sake, also in Coppa Italia, like Johnny said, and just the race for top four. I mean, like these last three spots, it's gonna go, guys. We know it's gonna go down to, if not the final match day, one of the last couple match days now that are slowly and actually fastly approaching. Sorry, we're gonna see another battle to the end for sure.
And to that point, Adriano, I think it's also, you mentioned the project being a little ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
We see 5 Italian teams still left in Europe, right? And that's this is a league that has been much maligned for several years. With to their credit, right? They've sort of earned it, and especially when you think about how the league is performing financially, and the controversy, around Juventus getting points deducted. It's just, it hasn't been a great look for the league for the last several years. But something like this, again, you can't downplay the importance of it in terms of the project. What I think getting to a semifinal means for both of these Milanese sides is the ability to continue to add to the project and to compete, right? It was so important for Inter to get to this stage for financial reasons, right? Like, you see all these reports come out of needing to get 60 million by July this summer. And if you've seen the numbers around what we've been able to do in terms of the prize money getting this far, it's changed sort of the trajectory for what we were expecting to happen this summer, I think, for both of our teams. And I think it's really important moving forward that, they take pride in getting to this point, but they're not satisfied with it. They want to continue to add to the squads and to the project.
Speaking about the game last Wednesday against Milan, it was another anticipated game, if we're going to throw in that word, if that's going to be the word of the podcast. But I know Gianmarco shared a tweet on a meme on Twitter. Milan was cooked in 11 minutes like a Barilla pasta. Eden Dzeko, 8th minute, Mkhitaryan, 11th minute, and that was pretty much it for the game. What did you make? I know there was still more drama in the second half and everything, but what did you make of the game?
I loved the approach in the first half. It almost looked like Milan was a little shell shocked at the physicality that Inter had come out with. Right, I don't know the exact number, but it didn't feel like Milan was winning much of those 50-50 balls. Right, Inter was in on every challenge, and we came out very, very intense, and I think that played into why we were able to grab the early lead. And obviously, as the game went on in the second half, you saw that I believe that it was a decision. It wasn't a drop in mentality by the players. I think Inzaghi wanted to play the second half the way that we played the second half, which was, sit back in our shell a little bit. There was a drastic difference in how we approached both halves. So I do think that came from the manager. We dropped back in our shell. Listen, we've defended a 2-0 lead, although there were some moments, especially when Tonali hit the post, where your heart is racing a little bit. But being in this position now, it's familiar to me because it just happened in the previous round, right? Inter took a 2-0 lead against Benfica into the second leg, and we saw how that played out. So I think it's good for the team that they've had that experience previously. And I also really like the mentality from Acerbi in the press conference today, talking about how if you think for a second that you're even in the final already, 1%, it's the wrong mentality to have. So what I'm hoping for tomorrow is to see Inter come back out on the front foot immediately and make it a tough, physical, intense game. It was aided by the referee for sure, who let things go, a few things that he shouldn't have let go, but I'm sure we'll get into that at some point. But I'm hoping for more of the same tomorrow. And if you see, the record in the last 3 games, Milan hasn't scored. They haven't scored in their last 2. So the feeling that I have is nervousness and excitement, obviously, but the nervousness comes from if they were to blow this lead, you would have to consider it an epic collapse, right? They have a stranglehold on the aggregate right now, and hoping for a very happy InterViews pod after the game tomorrow.
Adrian, what do you think of the mentality for Milan going into that match? Actually, now we heard the Inter side of things. How about the Milanisti side of things? How does it feel coming from your end?
Well, no, listen, obviously disappointing. I mean, it's not. I don't think the 11 players on the pitch and some, realize that, hey, we're in the semifinals of the Champions League. Like, this is not group stage. This is not qualifying. This is the semifinals of the biggest club competition in the world. So obviously disappointing to see that type of just mentality and way of play. I mean, it had to be a lot better than what was put on the pitch. It wasn't. Who you want to blame, who you want to put a finger on. Obviously it hurts when you're missing your best player on the pitch, but again, there's no excuse. And I think this team, if there was one thing that this team did last year, and we were always pretty gun ho on, was the group, and it really wasn't about the individual, and it was really about the group. And last week on Wednesday, we didn't see no group, we didn't see no nothing, we didn't see any cohesion. Flat foot from minute 1. Playing catch up for pretty much, obviously the 80 plus minutes. So obviously not the mentality to have, and obviously maybe recent form obviously hasn't been good for the team either. But again, we've always said on this podcast, and we all know as just Calcio fans as a whole, Champions League is a different beast. And then when you add in the derby, it's just it's like Johnny said a couple weeks ago, it's going to be a bloodbath. over 2 legs, right? So, yeah, I don't know, just there was just nothing to give. Like Milan didn't really show up, so it's hard to really kind of gain much off of that. I think it's something that obviously they have to put behind them, and tomorrow's obviously a big opportunity to really show maybe the true Milan. I'm hoping and obviously hopeful for that, because I think what we all deserve to see is 2 teams, really go at it the right way, and not really have, kind of this one team's up here and one team's down there, and it's just a lopsided affair. Which, I mean, yes, obviously, if you're a fan of the team that's winning, obviously that's great and that's amazing, and you want that to happen. But at the same time, I mean, for a Champions League semifinal to see 2 historic teams in Milan and Inter in the semifinals, with obviously a chance now to get to the final in Istanbul, it's something that we want to see. All players on the pitch, all really fighting it out. And I don't know where it's going to have to start. I think it's going to have to start with Pioli to really, to really get this group going. The grinta and the hunger has to come back, and it's do or die now. Obviously the aggregate, like the away goal, even though there's not really an away team, but technically there is, that whole away goal rule is out the window. So you have all to play for. It's really 90 plus minutes of do or die calcio, and I'm hoping obviously for Milan to wake up and get things going early, because not only did they not show up last week in Champions, over the weekend was another disaster of a performance for Milan. And if they don't shape up, not only will they not advance into the final of this Champions League campaign, they run the risk of not even making it to next year's Champions League, which would be a true shame. And again, going back to projects like we were saying with Alessandro, it's not a kind of not the detour that you kind of want to take with these projects that are still growing, among our eyes. So again, as a whole, to recap in one word, I guess obviously disappointing.
And Adriano, one of the things that I thought wasn't getting enough, conversation was,
Sure.
Not only was Leao absent for the first leg, but Benacer going down fairly early in that game. When you have a midfield like, the one that Inter does, which I think is entering into the conversation of one of the best midfields in Europe without a doubt. I thought that was a game changer for you guys more so than anything, because he is, as much as Tonali gets his flowers, I think Benacer is just as important, if not more important, to that midfield.
Well, for me, Alessa, I mean, games are won and lost in the midfield. So, and it really, you can really dictate the game through your midfield, how that transitions from defense to mid to going forward, and obviously coming back to defend as well. So obviously that hurt. We're not gonna say it didn't hurt. Now that he's out for the rest of the season, it's gonna continue to hurt until the season is over. But again, just not even having that next man up mentality. I think just as a whole, there's not really much more to say. This could have even been more than a 2-0 game. We're lucky it only stayed at 2. Obviously Inter still had their chances in the first. I believe it was in the first half, if I'm not mistaken, just before the half time, and to really put a dagger into Milan, which would have really probably broken a lot more TVs in Milanisti's houses. But just a shame. And again, it's not over. I mean, there's still 90 minutes to play, and like the cliche goes, I mean, the ball is round, so anything can happen tomorrow, and that's why you have to stay optimistic as a Milan fan. And just in general in this matchup, it's anything can really happen. So we're definitely excited.
Alessandro, do you have any predictions? Because we did get a prediction on social media from Mora11. They said 2-0 Inter, so exactly like the first leg. Do you have any predictions? Are you superstitious?
I'm insanely superstitious, so I won't give a score line. I won't give a score line prediction, but I'll give a player goal. How about that? I think the much maligned Denzel Dumfries is going to find himself on the end of a DiMarco cross, and I think he's going to bag himself a goal. Does that work for you guys?
Not for me, but not for me. But hey, it answers the question, so we'll take it.
Yeah, it's good enough. We have
I'm not. You already guys know. Don't ask me. I'm not making no prediction. You already know.
If we're on the topic of comments from social media, Gianmarco did write one on Instagram with not even with his personal account, with the InterViews account. Trying to be sneaky.
Yeah, like we wouldn't know. We know.
He said, "Why is Gianmarco the better looking and more wise co-host? How did you pick someone so incredible?"
That's that is
Gianmarco in a nutshell.
What it is, it's a man that's experiencing intense pressure and anticipation for tomorrow's game, and clearly the mental is sort of breaking there. So I think it's just a bit of delusion from a man who's under a lot of stress right now.
Fair enough. Fair enough. We'll take it. I kind of just wanted to go off. We said predictions. You say Dumfries score gets bags of goal there. Before we continue on to what we can maybe expect more from tomorrow. Going back to last week's game, who are you? Obviously, like we already discussed. I mean, the quick start, the game pretty much got put to bed fairly early. The Milan, like I said, the Milan side didn't really have much more to offer going the other way, playing catch up for 80, 85 minutes plus. On the Inter perspective, Alessandro, who impressed you the most, and who would you say kind of man of the match for you in that matchup?
For me, honestly, I thought Lautaro was immense in the game. Obviously he didn't get his name on the score sheet, but there's so much that he does where, a lot of times you have a captain that comes from your back line, right? They're behind the team and they're the one pushing the team forward. Lautaro does that plays that leadership role from the front. And I thought he did a great job just harassing Milan's back line. I thought, Kjaer and Tomori did not look comfortable against him. And I think that his energy changed their confidence a little bit and sort of shook them a little bit. So for me, the key man in the last game was Lautaro, despite him not getting a goal. There's a lot more that goes into this Inter team. I know we play with two forwards, but the forwards are asked to do a lot defensively, and there's not many strikers better at playing that defensive role up top than Lautaro, and it's he can change a game just with his pressure and his pressing.
Yeah, no, I mean we've spoken about it, Lautaro quite a bit, not maybe quite a bit, but here and there. I mean on the pod, just as if it be just the three of us or with another Inter guest. Clearly, it seems like you're pretty high on Lautaro. Is this the best Lautaro we've seen in an Inter shirt as of late? Because we've always said at least I can say, I mean, maybe the guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but, Lautaro has obviously the talent. He's a great striker. He can score. For me, it's been maybe a bit of the consistency stuff and, sometimes the mental stuff and really being, I guess, now that leader, which now that we see, him wear the captain's armband every now and then, it shows that, I guess, somebody believes that he can take on that role. Is this, again, going back to what I said, is this a bit like the best Lautaro we've seen in an Inter shirt? And is he finally breaking that mold of not being Mr. Consistent and coming up when you really, really need him the most?
To comment on his inconsistency, you're 110% right. And that's part of the frustration that Inter fans have with him, is that he does go through the dry spells. It's never, I never feel like he goes through a dry spell in terms of getting opportunities to score. Okay. It's always with his finishing, right? It's like just sometimes he's just not locked in. But you can say that for Lautaro, that he's in form right now. But I think a key to this recent uptick in form from Inter has been there's a lot of players that are hitting their best patch of the season at the right time, right? Lukaku is obviously playing the best football he's been playing all year right now. Another player that I spoke a lot about on the InterViews pod as being disappointing while we were trying to get him back into form was Brozovic. He just didn't look great, and then next thing you know, these last 4 or 5 games, he's been hugely influential, right? So yes, Lautaro is definitely in form. But the way this team is playing, it's just there's a lot of players that have hit their blue patch of the season, their purple patch, I guess, blue patch. I don't know what the hell
they're blue and black patch or whatever, right?
Their blue and black patch at the right time. It's obviously been a good time for us Interisti recently.
Do you think maybe the fact, because like we noticed some players, obviously, especially Argentinian-born players, had like a bit of spike in motivation and in terms of playing ever since winning the World Cup. Do you think Lautaro was one of those players that benefited from that win, or do you think it wasn't really much of a difference maker for him, or in the worst case, like kind of made him ease back a bit? Mind you, now recently it's hard to say that he eased back, but in general, it's been about 5 months since the World Cup ended, so that's why.
It's interesting because he did not have a great World Cup, right? And obviously his form after the World Cup wasn't great. So I do think that despite the fact that he lifted a World Cup trophy, which is the pinnacle for any professional, I do think that not performing for his national team, not being one of the people that really aided to them bringing home that trophy, I do think that hurt his confidence. But there has been a video that's been making the rounds on social media recently about a sit-down interview that he did with Diego Milito right after the World Cup at the Inter headquarters. And they were showing a side-by-side picture, one of Lautaro kissing the World Cup trophy, one of Diego Milito kissing the Champions League trophy. And Milito said, "I want you to get this one now." And it just, I watched that video again today, and in order for us to bring home this trophy, there's no doubt that he's going to be a big part of that, right? Him being off form is not going to do it. So as a striker, as a professional footballer, you can always look back on what you've already done. Experience plays a key role in games of this magnitude, and he's played in the biggest of them all, right, at a young age. So I think he's ready, and I have faith in his ability to help us to go after our biggest objectives this season.
How about Dzeko? What have you made of his season this year? He's I think 37 now. Obviously, he just scored last week. Contract's expiring at the end of this season. Do you see him renewing with Inter? Is it a player you've enjoyed watching this season? What have you made about Dzeko?
So 2 things there. The first, I do think that he's going to renew. There were a lot of rumors about what that figure was. It looked like it was about 4 million net a year, which is a lot to pay a 38-year-old going, he's going to be 38. It's a lot to pay. It's more than what Giroud is making as well. So when I first heard that news, I was iffy on it because I think one thing that you've seen from Inter this year is because of the injuries to Lukaku, because Correa has been inconsistent, because Lautaro has been inconsistent, and because even Dzeko has been inconsistent, amongst our forwards, we've had a lot of different combinations, and there hasn't been a lot of consistency among that group. And I think that played a key role in all of our strikers experiencing a dip of form, including Dzeko. What we've seen out of what we've seen out of him recently is this cup combination of him and Lautaro while he plays Lukaku and Correa in the league is really, really working, right? I think Dzeko is thriving off of a partnership with Lautaro that he's familiar, even with from last year. He impresses. There's some things that he does where he really shows his age, but he impresses me in the box, often with I think what we saw with Calabria. I mean, his physicality is obviously not waned. And And while Inter have not been too effective off of set pieces this year, like we've seen in the past, he is someone that is a danger man that you can't take your eye off of in those opportunities.